What are we excited to see this month? There's lots to see, but one is Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Samurai and the Prisoner, which we will talk about in depth today on Seattle Movies Daily, the weekly podcast about everything going on in Seattle movies, as well as all else that is coming. But to kick off, one final update on SIFF and last reflections on the Odyssey, because Liam, you received an email from SIFF this week. They seem to love to email you. What did it say?
Hi, Chase. I'm going to have to be like, we're not in a relationship, SIFF, okay? You guys don't need to keep emailing me. No, they actually sent a really heartening email because for those of us who care, and I believe that's a lot of us, about the ability to see movies in premium formats or as close as we can get to that, I received an email Monday evening, new shows of the Odyssey 70mm added. You're receiving this message because you attended one of our shows of the Odyssey in 70mm. It had an interruption during the opening week. We have had 0 interruptions over the past 2 weekends, so we feel good about adding more shows at this time. We're giving you early access to purchase or use your voucher from your screening to get tickets prior to the general public for the new shows on the weekend of August 14th to the 6th. There was a link to book additional tickets. I didn't book any more tickets.
I was going to say, you've seen it now 3 times.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I wrote about my... the way I spend too much time seeing Christopher Nolan movies on my personal Substack today, and about whether or not I'm a film bro, and the answer seems to be a resounding yes. But tickets are on sale as of yesterday morning at 9 a.m. And I gotta say, I think this is this feels like a win for SIFF, and they kind of need one.
No, yeah, and I think it's a win for theaters in general that this was the big test for can all these theaters do 70mm screenings of the biggest movie of the summer, and will people come out to see that? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. The fact that the screenings are going well, they're adding more showtimes through mid-August. I don't know if they'll add more. I think this is kind of the last hurrah for it. But this feels like a sign of you can do it, even with the challenges, even with the kind of very finicky nature of the format. You can make it happen and people will come out to see it.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you're at the Boeing IMAX, in which case you can't. But that's a whole other story.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're trying to find as many ways to get the word out about that as possible. So hopefully that, not that we have the power to change those things, but it is as we've said before, it is a missed opportunity. Are there any updates on negotiations?
Not currently. They're still bargaining. They're still going back and forth. Hopefully we'll have more information about some of the specific line by line of that soon. But for now, it's sort of just a wait and see. Right. Internal ongoing conversations echo what we had said last time of thank a cinema worker, show your support, continue to support folks because these things go hand in hand. I remember, I think it was like a year or so ago, maybe more, when I had been on the kind of roundtable discussion that KUOW had done about what we'll be looking for in the year ahead. And it was kind of like, I'll be looking and seeing like what the worker perspective is on this because they're the ones that make everything happen. And so that's just what I'm going to continue to be doing. It's not going to be something where tomorrow it's like, oh, everything's perfect and fine, even if they get a contract. It's like, no, this is an ongoing conversation, an ongoing challenge between arts organizations and finding a way to support the people that make them run too, and also keep the lights on. It's going to be an existential question for the future beyond just even this kind of conversation too.
Well, very quickly to that point, I think it's important to say that there is a connection between the quality of projection and experience you have at the theater and the workers. These things are interrelated. I think we've spent a significant chunk of time having this relationship of like multiplex theaters are hell and higher quality places, like not now, but for a while, Alamo Drafthouse and, indie or rather nonprofit ones like SIFF and Majestic Bay are kind of the places to go. And I think that is continuing to be reinforced by the idea that I think more people want to see this movie at SIFF than they do at Pacific Place, even though I know many, many people are seeing the movie at Pacific Place. But for that premium experience, and it's not just the projection, it's the whole experience. They're having been at 2 evening screenings of The Odyssey at SIFF. I can say that like the energy is pretty electric in the lobby before the movie starts, and that all relates back to this. So the way you see a movie and the quality of the projection is related to the worker experience and how that we're all kind of like coming into the theater and the event that we're having.
No, absolutely.
Speaking of SIFF, there's lots playing there this month, and we're going to continue to talk about it through both of the following segments of this show. Should we take a quick break and then talk about what to see in August?
Yes, we will be right back with everything that you should see at SIFF and elsewhere this August. And we're back talking all the stuff that you should go out to see this August. We'll get to the big one of The Samurai and the Prisoner this week, but to start off, Liam, what is your first film to see this month at local theaters?
I think what I'm about to say here is the biggest release, the biggest screening of the summer, which is at SIFF as part of their Cold War Summer Series, Austin Powers, 35 millimeter screening. I rewatched, I think, the first two Austin Powers during the pandemic. The first Austin Powers movie has not aged a lick.
No.
It is hilarious. It is still funny. Yeah, there are jokes. Like, I was talking when we spoke with Carson Rennekamp on CityCast Seattle about it. Jane, our host, expressed a little bit of concern that, like, maybe it hasn't aged well. That movie was fully aware of what Austin Powers was in 1995 when it came out, which is 31 years ago. It's so funny, it's so smart, and it's so well directed and shot and edited that it is going to make you crave for the pre-Apatovian days when pointing a camera at someone and hitting record was not the de facto method for making comedy. So I would highly recommend that, and I'm going to pair it with film screening later in the month, which is Bottoms at Northwest Film Forum, which, while very different from Austin Powers, is a return to form in how it's a cleverly devised, written comedy with a real structure and a real plot. And I think Bottoms is one of the funniest movies of the decade so far.
Ooh, wow. Great Marshawn Lynch performance.
Great Marshawn Lynch. Everything about that movie just, it's absolutely insane. Nicholas Galitzine should be doing stuff like that instead of, frankly, trying to play He-Man. I think he's better suited for this. So I know you asked for one, but I'm giving you those two. What's your first pick for August?
So I'll start off with one that I feel like contains within it two movies, and I mean that in a positive way, and that is Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. I won't talk a whole lot about it now because I think we'll want to maybe talk about it next week in a little bit more detail, but this is the new film from Jane Schoenbrunn. It's going to be playing on 35 millimeter. It stars Hannah Einbinder from Hacks in her first feature leading role. She's done some stuff after this, but this is truly the first. And also stars, is it Gillian or Gillian Anderson?
You're talking about my wife, Gillian Anderson? Yes, it's Gillian.
Okay.
I think. I've loved her since X-Files.
Yes. We'll just go with the icon of X-Files, who is playing a former star of a horror film, and Hannah Einbinder is playing a filmmaker who's tasked with rebooting this horror movie series for like a new generation. And she travels to the Pacific Northwest to reconnect with this star and discovers much more than just a film. It's a lot of fun. It's very funny. I was at a screening of Maddie's Secret, the John Early film, a few weeks back, and they played the trailer for Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma, and it got applause. People were already on board with it. And I think it's not just that it's like playing to the crowd. I think it's that it's a very funny, well-made movie too. Like some of the jokes, like right out of the gate, are just so good, but then it becomes like a very sincere exploration of sex and identity and being comfortable in your own body, but then also is like a horror movie with blood geysers. I'll have more to talk about with it soon, but it's the one that I would say for this month is my top.
It feels like we're entering an era of, and maybe we've been here for a long time, of too much movie meta-ness in some of our genre stuff, right? Which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, that could be a compliment. It's a lot of movie. It's like 4 different movies. But
here's the thing. I think this works as its own thing. There's so many good jokes about not just slasher movies, but the culture around slasher movies and like the attempt to reclaim certain things, certain movies, whether that works, like the discourse around it. And it never feels like too inside baseball. Like you can still kind of get it, even if you're not a horror person, because then I think the performances are like both very funny but also sincere. It's a good one. It's not what
Nice.
I expected. If you've seen, because did you see I Saw the TV Glow or?
I did. I love I Saw the TV Glow. I mean, as much as that movie's devastating.
Yeah, this is
So-
more fun,
Good.
but also I think cuts deep into some stuff. But I'll save more for next week when there will be more to share. What is your next pick that is not Austin Powers or Bottoms?
Well, keeping with the Cold War summer of it all, I have selected GoldenEye, also at Cold War Summer, which is playing at the end of the month in 35. Well, maybe not my favorite James Bond movie. It is probably the most important Bond movie of my life because I was raised on a steady diet of mostly Sean Connery by my dad and a mom who was like, these movies aren't about real life. He's a sexist pig. So I got both of those. And GoldenEye was the first one I saw in the movie theater because I was sort of old enough. And, between that and the video game GoldenEye kind of it kept me on the court. It kept me fed on a steady diet of James Bond movies. And, well, certainly not. It's in the top 3, probably. For me, it's that. It's on Her Majesty's Secret Service. And I'm a huge Skyfall fan. Talk about a meta take on Bond. That's very much a do we need James Bond movie? But GoldenEye comes from a time when I was a little bit of a, a movie bozo, the age of 13 or however old I was when it came out. And so it'll be cool. I'm hoping I can get to see it at this screening and kind of reconnect with that part of my youth. What is your next pick?
So I'm going to be going with Remake, which is a documentary that is going to be playing at the Northwest Film Forum starting next week. They had played Sherman's March, which is the same filmmakers before this. This is his newest film, and it's a pretty heavy one, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. But it's a very autobiographical portrait of a filmmaker and then losing his son. So that's inevitable to it, but I've been thinking not to get too serious about it. Talking with friends about death and life. Death is part of living, and we are in proximity to it, but we don't often talk about it. And that's understandable because it is hard. But it is also something that I think once you go through it, talking openly about it and confronting it because it is always on your mind is itself the only kind of way to process it. And so not as fun as a James Bond movie, certainly.
I mean,
but,
death surrounds James Bond at
yeah,
all
that's
times.
fair.
He's
But
a murderer. Right.
but
Right.
death and haha, everything is fine.
Totally.
This is going to be a pretty devastating one, and I'll probably have more to say about it hopefully soon, just because I think it's a worthwhile one about our relationship to death, and then also a filmmaker processing how their films capture a life that is now no longer around is a tough thing, but I think a worthwhile one. And so I would say definitely check that out at the Northwest Film Forum. I'm very glad it's playing there. I feel like it's not a one that would play anywhere else if it was not at the Northwest Film Forum. So very glad that it's there.
That's why we love the Northwest Film Forum. I will say, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to see this just because I read a little bit more about what it is. And I'm a little scared of it. And I also have an 8-year-old right now who's constantly asking me questions about death. So it's back on my mind much more frequently than I would like it to be.
Only go into it if you're feeling up for it. Definitely a pick that I'm saying be take care of yourself, be okay. But I still think is worth checking out if you read about it and think it's interesting. What is your next pick?
I'm going to hit my last 2 very quickly.
Do it.
They are both at the Beacon, so I'm going to put them together. One is one of the great Criminals Are Actually Losers movies of all time. Elaine May's Mikey and Nicky, starring the great John Cassavetes and the equally great Peter Falk. There was a time when our greatest ethnic movie stars used to make TV shows like Johnny Stompanato and Columbo, and the rest of the time would collaborate with daring an up-and-coming, well, not at this point, now she was established, amazing filmmakers like Elaine May to make these incredibly complex this is essentially a two-hander about a criminal and his friend who spend an evening in Manhattan together.
Mm.
But what is amazing is that they shot so much footage. Like, and May had to steal the negative from the theater, from the production company, because they were trying to take it away from her. And at the end of the day, it's just a movie about two pathetic sad sacks, but it's just extraordinary. So that would be my pick. A little bit of a bummer, but also a really fun movie. However, at the end of the month, The Beacon is showing a movie I haven't seen in its entirety, Colossal Youth, directed by Pedro Costa. The reason I haven't seen it in its entirety is if you've ever experienced any of Pedro Costa's movies, they really are movie theater necessary cinema. They are slow boils, shot in like something of a magical realism style, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've seen any, but they also tend to be about the same favela in Brazil. And his movies are just Titanic in sort of, he's a Titanic international filmmaker, admired by Apita Chong from Thailand, was admired by Bellatar from Hungary. And I've never been able to just like find the headspace to sit down and watch these. So I don't know if I'm going to get to this because it's like Sunday at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, but this, I would argue, is the ideal Beacon movie-going experience because it's a challenging non-English language film that moves slowly and really requires you to be in a room reckoning with it, which is hard to do on your couch when your phone is easily accessible. So, Colossal Youth, Pedro Costa, 1994.
I will take your word for it.
Making 2006. I was way off, but it's meant to be a really, really interesting movie. And I'm sorry, I said Brazil. That it's actually Portuguese, and it takes place in the Fontanas neighborhood in Lisbon. So I was way off there too.
We got there.
I'm glad I checked that. But yes, film's part of the Criterion collection as well.
Wonderful. Well, I'll just rattle off two quick ones to close out. And the first, I'll have a disclaimer. It's going to be First Cow, the Kelly Reichardt film that my colleagues in the Seattle Film Critics Society are playing at the Northwest Film Forum as part of their SFCS at 10. I was not part of that nominating committee and don't stand to benefit from it in any way other than I just like people seeing good movies. And I think First Cow is one of the most beautiful Pacific Northwest movies ever made.
Can I confess something here?
Yeah.
That's the only Kelly Reichardt movie I've never seen.
See, it did not get the love it deserved. I still remember right before the pandemic seeing it at a press screening, being like, that was incredible. I then spoke to Kelly Reichardt, and we were starting to
one of the gods.
We were starting to get a sense of where things were going, and then it's like, well, I don't know if anyone's ever going to see this. I still think it has gained an appreciation.
Yes.
But if you can see it in a theater, you should do so. It has great performances, such great cinematography. It's very funny in its own way. I think Kelly Reichardt is always secretly a funny filmmaker.
Yeah, people don't give her enough credit for her film that followed this one, the name of which escapes me right now.
Showing Up
is very funny and like one of the great portraits of like a local artist. I need to rewatch it now that I'm living in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, so go out to see First Cow and then swing on to Showing Up as well. And then my very last one, and I know we had talked a little bit about Greg Araki, but I am going to say to close out the month, Mysterious Skin at the Beacon, because I was thinking more about it after we had talked a little bit about Greg Araki in the context of I Want Your Sex, and thinking that I really want to express that, like, I Want Your Sex and think it is good, but this is like Greg Araki at his best to me, and I think holds up in a way that just really like doesn't happen all that much because it's very much a precise portrait of its time and the characters and like time capsule, but then also the like sort of portrait of the domestic of pain of like growing up unfortunately feels only all the more resonant. It is again going to be a very heavy one that I would say has a lot, especially in the final sequence, that kind of just hits like a truck, but in a way that I think serves this overall vision and has also just like really great performances as well across the board. And yeah, I would not be able to say that I had talked about the best movies to see in Seattle if I did not give this one more of a shout out and mention at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I also am sort of intrigued. I've not seen this one. I'm intrigued by the Joseph Gordon-Levitt in a role like this because
He used to be a good actor.
He hasn't done a lot of acting lately,
No, I know.
right?
He's popped up in some things here and there, but no, this was like Joseph Gordon-Levitt at the height of kind of, I think, him doing really interesting work. It's a very messy, complicated performance. Yeah, I'm like looking at his filmography of recently. It's not a lot. He's
what
done
was his
some
last movie?
He was a voice actor in Wake Up Dead Man as the baseball announcer.
Okay, that's not anything. He is friends with Ryan Johnson, right? So
yeah, so I guess because of Brick
and Looper, Looper is one of the great sci-fi movies of the last.
He was in Paradise Records, which I know was like shot locally. That's the Logic movie, but I don't know how big of a role.
Logic.
Yeah, whole other story there.
Okay, interesting.
But other than that,
we'll do a 4-hour episode about that at another time.
Another day, another time.
Speaking of long movies,
yes.
Should we take a quick break and pivot to our conversation about The Samurai and the Prisoner?
Absolutely. We will be right back to talk Kiyoshi Kurosawa's murder mystery epic. And we're back. We are now going to dive fully into The Samurai and the Prisoner. Liam, you saw it just last night?
Just last night. I watched it on a link that I first opened on my phone, so I lost my first of 5 viewing privileges. Then I reopened it by accident to watch it and see if I could stream it, so I lost my... Anyway, I got down to 1.
I was going to say, living dangerously there.
I was messing with it. It was a smooth experience on my laptop. Yes, I watched it last night. I was very excited about it.
We are not going to spoil anything because I do think there is kind of a mystery at the core of this, but we are going to talk about the broad scope of the story. But if you want to see it for yourself, you can see it when it opens at the SIFF Cinema Uptown starting Friday.
Right.
And I would recommend doing so because it's a lot.
It would be a much better experience in the movie theater, which is not a diss to the film itself at all. But it's a lot of movie. What do you are on record? You're in fact quoted in the Wikipedia of this movie. Did you know that?
I did not, but that happens.
Yeah, you're all over that Wikipedia. I was like, Jason's famous.
I'm pro on this movie, and I think I'm more pro on his filmography, especially his late filmography, than maybe you are, which I would be happy to get into and talk about because you had written a piece that I thought was interesting about both Chime and The Serpent's Path. Or not Chime. Yes, Chime.
No, Chime.
But then you caught up with Cloud, so we can talk about his overall filmography. But for me, this is unlike anything he's ever done before.
Yes.
But I still feel him in it. I feel like there is a real interesting kind of, not subversion of genre, but sort of grappling with genre that is not like, oh, I'm above it. Like, I'm still going to engage with this kind of long-standing, like, historical type of filmmaking, but also do stuff that I have literally never seen. Like, watching it again, and I know this is early on, so it's okay to say, the moment where there is a killing and then it begins to recreate or try and figure out what happened and trace the trajectory of a potential weapon being used.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple, but there was something that just made me lean forward and say, oh, what an interesting sort of modern thing that I'm used to in like a murder mystery that then fits in so elegantly to the rest of this movie.
Tell me more about that.
Well, to me, it's like, and people were making jokes of like katanas out or whatever instead of knives out.
That's so I hated that. It doesn't. This movie has nothing to do with Knives Out beyond being a murder mystery.
But it is that it transposes the idea of trying to make sense of a world that is falling out of balance. Like the murder mystery part of it, because there are a series of 3 different killings that happen throughout, and then a central character who is trying to figure out what happened while also a war is waging outside of the castle.
His castle is essentially under siege.
Yes, which invites questions about who is truly the prisoner, because he's kind of trapped in this place where he has done this because he thinks it's important, but now is stuck with those choices. And then when people begin to die around him, he wants to figure out why and how that happened, but it almost feels futile. Like even when he finds things out, there is the bigger problem that is looming. I don't know. I think I think it's a movie that is very modern in that regard and is looking at a historical figure who was kind of dismissed as being, without spoiling anything, a little bit of like a coward for the way he was, and it complicates that, and then is also just very engaging. And the way like some of it's staged, there's not a lot of action, but the action is really engaging. And I think the like piecing together of the specific violence is itself kind of action sequences, but in his own way. But I don't know. I feel like it's going to be one that if you saw Cloud or Chime, it's not that. It's much more, especially in the ending stretch, drawn out and kind of patient in some respects. But what did you think of it? Because this was your first time seeing it.
So I kind of like Kiyoshi Kurosawa has been someone who's I've sort of ambiently been aware of for 5 or 6 years. I feel like he's been around for a long time. I mean, obviously he's in his early 70s now, and he maybe got on the map in America first with Pulse in like 1997, which is a film I have not seen.
It's very good if you have not seen it.
Yeah, it's a serial killer movie, right?
Yes, but I would say there's something more going on, but I don't want to say what it is. Go ahead.
So I've kind of not been on the train, but I've been trying to get on it. I went to a screening earlier this year that was sort of causing existential crisis in my mind, but I'm always having them, and the screening was of Chime and Serpent's Path.
Mm-hmm. It was a double feature put on by the Grand Illusion. Double feature,
yep. So Chime is about 45 minutes long. Serpent's Path is like a 90-minute movie, if I remember correctly, which he remade 2 years ago in France.
And that's coming out, I believe, relatively soon as well.
Is it? Okay. And then I watched about an hour of Cloud. I still have a little bit left, unfortunately. But watching this took precedent. So I've sort of been like enmeshed in, one of my sort of watching subjects this year has been Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Chime didn't really hit for me because let's start. I think Kurosawa's greatest skill as a filmmaker is his use of the camera. I think he likes to play scenes mostly in single takes, though of course he does, use traditional coverage. I think he's really great at that. I think Chime is about a sound. So Chime is a tough movie to see because it is never, I don't think it's ever planned to be released as like a regular Blu-ray. I think it's going to be like traveling around, right? I think it was sold as
Janus
an NFT.
has given it some sort of more release, but it was originally being kind of like pirated
an NFT
around.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's about a guy who goes crazy listening to a sound, and he's played by a regular Kiyoshi Kurosawa actor. That film just like didn't really hit for me, but I think it was a weird place to start. So also was the
Wait, was that your
Path.
first? Was that your first?
Okay,
yeah.
They're really bleak movies.
I know.
Cloud's a little more fun, but also still bleak.
I was gonna say by the time you get to the end of Cloud, you're like, oh boy.
Yeah. I mean, and I think I get why he's viewed as a bit of a master. I think he's certainly
very prolific.
He's very prolific. He has incredible control over what he does. I just can't 100% jive with it, which is not a reflection on the craft or anything like that. My feeling on this movie is that I was really impressed by how committed it was to feeling like a Jidageki film. Like even though again it takes place before that, the way that era is traditionally portrayed in Japanese films, I can't help admire what it's trying to do, and it's very successful. I found myself wanting a more conventional mystery. I thought eventually Kanbei, the prisoner, would come out of the cell and they would have like a much more normal Watson Holmes kind of dynamic than they do, but that was maybe because of the way the movie is reviewed. This is a movie that reminded me of two other movies. One, another world cinema masterpiece, existential mystery called Once Upon a Time in Anatolia, which is one of the, I don't know if you know that film, but is one of my favorite films of the last 20 years, Nuri Bilge Ceylan, which is about men driving around the Anatolia steppe plains in search of a body. and sort of the long, dark night of the soul that they have, and then the day after. And it features sort of focuses mostly on the town doctor. But this didn't have quite the payoff that did for me. That movie really, really holds up with me. The other movie that this reminds me of a lot is The Odyssey.
Okay.
These are both movies about men out of step with their times, reckoning with who are in leadership roles with subordinates who are much more superstitious and much more sort of obsessed with the customs of their era. And both movies feature a mid to late scene with their wives where the men confess sort of like the crisis that they're having. And look, maybe I'm thinking and talking about The Odyssey too much, but like,
no, I've been thinking the same thing.
I can't help but feel like this movie is like the more austere version of a film about a quote unquote great man having to reckon with his place in the world that he's in and the decision that he makes to go against the tide. Now, I'd be honest and say that in a way it's much more philosophically strong in Samurai and the Prisoner than it might be in The Odyssey, because that's just the wavelength that the movie is on. So I really admire this movie, and I think I need to watch it again. I think I especially need to watch the last 40 minutes again, because the kind of novelistic, complex structure of the movie goes to a different level there. And I also will say, partially this is a language thing, partially this is a style thing. I found myself constantly having to be like, which character are we talking about here? The movie does not hold your hand and sort of reminding you who the figures are that are in play.
But to me, that's refreshing.
Totally.
Because I think a film that is like, the characters know who everybody is. They are living their lives. This is the reality they're in. That's refreshing to me. But I do think a second watch paid off. And I think it's okay to talk about that. I don't think it's a failure of the movie to say, like, hey, you probably would benefit from seeing it again.
I will say, I'm especially in our era of constant distraction, I'm very like anti the idea that any movie can be, especially movies of ambition, can be watched and consumed in one go. And like, yeah, I think unless you can go to the movie theater and really dive in, there's too much going on in this movie, like I think there is in The Odyssey. But I think one difference between that movie and this movie is and this is a fault and sort of an interesting flaw of Nolan's, is he likes to be like, remember this, remember this, remember this.
Yeah, he doesn't
never
really
wants
do
you
that
to be
here.
lost.
Yeah, that's the thing I was gonna say, is I have been thinking a lot about The Odyssey. And if you liked The Odyssey, you should see The Samurai and the Prisoner. I think it would be up your alley. It might stretch you a little bit and challenge you a little bit, but I think it would pay off. But the biggest difference is that Nolan is constantly reminding and making sure that you're not forgetting things and calling back to things. And there aren't those moments. There have been people that have been talking about how in Nolan's filmography, you don't get as many, I won't say none, but you don't get as many of those moments of just the ordinary, the day-to-day life. Whereas in The Samurai and the Prisoner, there's an entire part around tea that becomes very important. And there are those moments
I
of just...
love that scene, watching him make tea. I thought it was beautiful.
And then it becomes important, but there is that sort of greater texture and layers to the life where it's not just everything serves a purpose and is like propulsing us to the next thing. In The Samurai and the Prisoner, it's like, oh, we are sitting in a room with characters talking about things or just reflecting or living their life. And then those things become very significant, but in a more kind of natural way. And I don't even think one is like bad. They're just very different. And so I would make sure to like have that piece of context, while also still saying I think it would be very fun if The Samurai and the Prisoner had the same love that The Odyssey got, but that's never going to happen.
Brother. There's no... okay, I think to that point, one thing that is interesting about the sort of the difference between American multiplex movies and a piece of world cinema like this is that our attention is addled in those movies. That even Nolan's movie, right? Like, I mean, he like his greatest skill and also the way that he matches Michael Bay is that he cuts every 3 seconds, right? Like, there's a certain amount. There's not a lot of shots that hold in Nolan, right?
No.
Now, Nolan's thing is that Nolan is constantly playing with what the camera is, right? The camera in a Nolan film can be a memory, It can be a flash forward. It can be the moment that we're having right now. It can be a whole multitude of things. I would say that with one very notable exception in this movie, which is a flash forward, right at around the midpoint. This movie has a much more traditional, objective, for lack of a better word, style. The camera is capturing events as opposed to motivating the action or anything along those lines.
And I mean this positively because I don't think it's like stuffy, but it at times can feel like a stage production in many respects.
Well, and very famously to that point, I don't know how much you're up on Akira Kurosawa's filming style in this era, but especially in his masterpiece, and I have a print of it that I have to put up here. One of his multiple High and Low, which opens and in mostly the first hour, I guess, 45 minutes of that movie takes place
entirely in a room,
in a room, and they filmed it essentially like a play as much as they could with one camera in the background and one doing closes, and he choreographed the movement of the camera so that it could feel like of a piece. And when you watch that movie, it absolutely does. And I don't think Kiyoshi Kurosawa is doing exactly the same thing, but the cuts are slow and deliberate. The framing is very wide. He favors on the whole, a wider angle lens, but it is getting at something similar to The Odyssey, which is like the role of this man in his changing society.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, talking about this movie has sort of made me... It's not the most enjoyable watch. I think when you get about 15, 20 minutes in, you're like, all right, murder, like the whodunit.
Yeah, I don't want to oversell that.
Doesn't double down on that at all.
But I think like that would turn it into a farce. Like, I think I'm enjoying the fact that this is like, what would someone do to try and figure something like this out? But it doesn't become so like swept up in that because there's still all this other stuff going on.
Yeah,
like personally,
really is.
politically, like, and then a lot of it just is conversations down in a cell where it's like, oh, he doesn't have anybody else to talk to. This is the only person he can go to. And I don't know. I'm tempted to go see it even again, potentially this weekend, just to see some of the bigger scenes. Because there are not a lot, but a couple like key action scenes that I think really work. Because it's like where you were talking about High and Low. The other one I was going to say was Ran. But
the best movie I've ever seen. Ran is maybe the best movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Yeah. No, really. Like, I don't think there's a better movie I've ever seen in my life than Ran. I think it's an extraordinary... If you haven't seen that movie...
Make it a double feature.
Well, that's a 6-hour evening.
6 hours, yeah.
But Ran is... So one of the podcasts I did years ago was a deep dive into all the films of Toshiro Mifune and Akira Kurosawa. Toshiro Mifune is not in Ran. He was going to be, but it didn't work out. But Ran is one of the great adaptations of Shakespeare's King Lear. One of the great adaptations of all time. It is truly a movie that like will inspire you to be silent and reflective because it is just an extraordinary, massive, I mean, way bigger than Samurai and the Prisoner movie about warring states and in Japan, and features an actual castle being burned to the ground.
It's really remarkable.
Yep. And but it's hard not to watch these, even though they're both named Kurosawa. Beyond that, there's so many films from this era made by Kurosawa and others, but I would say in terms of the prestige, like, it's hard not to picture the deceased Akira Kurosawa's film playing a role in this film.
Yes,
it's very
but
much
then
there.
it is Kiyoshi Kurosawa's own version.
Yes.
And his own sensibility. And I like that sensibility still. And I don't know, he's my guy.
I totally get it. And I think I'm going to grow into it and I'm going to continue this exploration. One thing I want to say before we wrap, he has a way of filming in the contemporary films rooms, like sanitized sanitary rooms, like the lab in Chime and the home in Cloud, where the Yoshi does most of his business, and the way windows are in this very specific way that feels like he's commenting on the state of the world with the environment and the way he captures it. And the same thing happens in Samurai and the Prisoner with the with the tatami and the mats and everything in it. Like, he's a really keen commentator on the world his characters exist in just by how he frames. Windows feel oppressive. They feel like they make you small. You feel insulated in the rooms that you're in. There's not a lot of like, oh, I'm in this building in downtown Tokyo and I can hear the world outside. Everyone's in a fishbowl. Which is an interesting thing to think about, the kind of claustrophobia of Samurai and the Prisoner as well. And I wanted to note that before.
It's characters trapped in their own worlds that they've built as like protection from everything else, but are now suddenly imprisoned in. And so, I don't know. I can't wait for more people to see it. I'm glad it's coming here. I'm glad it's getting a good release. Yeah,
I would say this is the critics' pick if we were to do such a thing for the week. Yeah. Even though I have mixed feelings on it, there's something truly extraordinary about what he's trying to do. All right, I guess that's it. What are we talking about next week, Chase?
Well, I think we should talk about teenage sex and death at Camp Miasma. I think that.
What if we haven't seen it by next week, Chase?
I will find a way. We'll connect.
Oh, that sounds good. We'll talk later.
Okay. And then it could be whatever. There's the restoration re-release of Your Name, which I think is interesting, and I always like to shout out animation when that's getting a push. And then anything else that's going on, whatever you would like to talk about as well. It's a good summer for movies. I think it's been positive, even as the industry is ups and downs and always has challenges. I'm feeling good about this summer season.
Yeah, I think it's been a really interesting year. So with that, we'll see you next time on Seattle Movies Daily.
Thanks everyone for listening. Go out and see some good movies, and we'll see you next week.